Why did Musk and Farage fall out?
I mean, he saw Farage exactly for what Farage is.
Disgraceful, isn't
Did
it?
he get in touch with you?
Elon Musk said to me,
I have a surprise for you.
the trigger point was Farage saying,
But it's not racist.
and then I think the other thing, to have someone say, well, I'm going to get $100 million from Elon Musk, when actually $100 million was never offered.
That Nigel Farage has been quite possibly the most influential politician.
What the country needs right now are lions.
But you'd rather have a fox in power than a bunch of lions just off in the savannah somewhere.
No, I don't
What
want
can
a
you
fox.
do from the savannah? What are you going to do in the savannah?
There's no point having a fox in power, because actually
Hopefully
what
we'll
will
reduce
happen...
immigration. That's what everyone wants.
Yeah, but he won't, will he? Because
What have you started?
with my new political party, anyone who's fearing the vote being split in 2029, stop worrying about it.
There is a slight split. There is a bit of a splitting.
There is no splitting of the vote.
You're not going to get in power, are you?
Why not?
Hi guys, can you please do me a favour? We're trying to make sure over 50% of you viewers subscribe. Please hit subscribe now. It's free and helps us grow. Bloody hell. What have you started? What are you doing, Ben? What have you done? What's going on?
What do you mean, with my new political party?
Yeah.
Well, it was absolutely necessary, Andrew. I've known that for a long time. Ever since Nigel Farage came back as leader of Reform, I actually knew unless Reform could be democratised and checks and balances brought in on Farage, and a party therefore being able to take in other great minds into its body of people, that it would never be the hope that we all have of it, because Farage is Reform, Reform is Farage. And you might recall I fought that campaign to democratise the party, which, notwithstanding all the declarations made by Yusuf and Farage claiming that they have done it, they haven't. It's firmly in Farage's and Yusuf's control. And in the absence of a party that's democratized and able, therefore, to attract great minds into it, because why would you join a party which is Farage's domain, where you can be thrown out on your ear without, 5 seconds discussion? Without that, I don't think Reform will ever deliver on the hopes and aspirations of the British people. And layered on that, of course, with Reform is that I don't think Farage has a political philosophy. He pivots, as you may have seen, from one issue to another without any kind of overarching belief system. And that's a problem, because he's reacting to issues rather than having a coherent, holistic approach to how he would like to govern the country, which is what is so desperately needed in the country. So I've known for a long time that a new political party was needed. And I spoke to people about it in 2024, and they all raised their eyebrows at me and said, that's absolutely daft. And I can say on this program, I don't think I'm breaching a confidence that even Elon Musk, with whom I had a conversation in January this year, after he said Farage wasn't fit to lead Reform, even Elon Musk said to me, why don't you start a new party? And I said, well, it's kind of difficult in the UK to do that. I can see, and I completely agree, that we need a force like that, but it's very, very hard to do it. And then the opportunity opened up, Andrew, when Rupert Lowe was thrown out the way he was from Reform. And I thought that was a kind of watershed moment in the political landscape, because people could then see precisely what it was that I was, the results of the kinds of things that I was complaining about. Precisely, they could see what would happen. And with throwing Rupert Lowe out and then throwing Suella Braverman and other like-minded people, or ostensibly like-minded people, under a bus, I think the political sort of waters opened up, and the need and obvious place for a new party became apparent. And so I launched Advance UK, which I hope has the constitution and foundations capable of delivering it, not just into office, but delivering it into office having attracted great minds, fearless speakers, people who are on the same have the same political philosophy, and who will stand their ground, who will not who will not bend over in the pursuit of a shilling or in the pursuit of favors and graces, which is so often used to dull down the political landscape. We need a political party, and I hope Advance UK will be it, that will fight absolutely relentlessly for the re-establishment of the United Kingdom.
Did Elon Musk So he's responsible for this in a sense. He started this. Did he get in touch with you?
So Elon, it's a funny story. I was on GB News and Errol Musk was coming on, I think his father.
Yes.
And the hostess of the channel, the presenter, Nano Akua, said to me, wouldn't it be great if we could get Elon on? And Elon and I follow each other on X. And so I just said, well, I'll text him and see whether he's prepared to come on. And so I texted Elon and I said, where I'm on GB News, I'm on it for 3 hours. Could you come on for 10 minutes in the next 3 hours sometime? And he texted me straight back and he said, direct message me on X. He said, I'm out at the flicks with my children, but let's chat later. So I had a nice chat with him that Sunday evening.
Bloody hell. And he said, start a new party.
He said, start a new party. And he saw Farage exactly for what Farage is. And he also saw what the United Kingdom needed. But as you and I know, starting a new party here is very, very difficult. But I think that has changed too. I think the cultural disposition, if I can put it that way, of the British people to vote either Labour or Conservative is gone. They're looking for parties that will actually deliver that in which they believe. And I think the silent majority actually want what Advanced UK is offering, what they hope Reform would have offered, but they're going to be disappointed if they're still labouring under that illusion.
Why did Musk and Farage fall out?
So I think at the heart of it, there are a couple of things. The trigger point was Farage saying that Tommy Robinson deserved to be in prison, and Musk claiming, in my view correctly, that Tommy Robinson was a political prisoner. And actually, if you look at I don't know if you want to have this debate about Tommy Robinson now, but if you look at the facts...
I'm big on Tommy. I'm a big fan of Tommy.
But if you look at the facts, Tommy Robinson was involved in a civil action where he had breached a civil action injunction, an injunction imposed on him by a civil court. And normally that would be... the penalty for doing that would be a fine or some kind of sanction, and you'd be brought back to court and, you'd have your knuckles rapped by the judiciary. But the Attorney General, which is a political appointment, took it upon himself to get involved. And in order for the Attorney General to get involved, he has to satisfy himself that this is a case of national importance. So Tommy Robinson's civil action, in the Attorney General's mind, was of national importance. And having inserted himself into the case, he effectively elevated it to a criminal level by saying that Tommy Robinson's in contempt of court and should have the maximum penalty.
Imprisoned in solitary for
in prison.
A year.
I mean, it's absolutely bizarre. So whether or not you like Tommy Robinson, I know you like him, but whether or not you do, and Farage clearly does not, is irrelevant. The fact is he was a political prisoner because it was a politician who elevated his case from being a civil case effectively to a criminal one.
That's interesting.
Are you with me? It's an open and shut debate. And so Farage, who loathes Tommy Robinson, said he deserves to be in prison and he's a wife beater and all this kind of thing. And that obviously got Musk's...
Did he call him a wife beater?
He has accused him of, it's either being a wife beater, I've got to be careful not
That's
to be
why
sued.
I ask.
Yeah. Either a wife beater or a woman beater, one of the two.
Is there evidence for that?
Well, Tommy Robinson absolutely denies it. I think Farage may have even said, you'll have to fact check me, may have even said that he was arrested for it. Perhaps it can be fact checked while we're on.
Robinson's talked about this, but he has a criminal record, a list as long as your arm, violence against women.
But Tommy Robinson says he hasn't been arrested for it. I'm sure that if he hasn't been arrested for it, he hasn't been arrested for it. So, Farage, look, he detests Tommy Robinson, and that's fine. That's Farage's prerogative. But it's not Farage's prerogative to not see the issue clearly. And actually, I'd say Farage, of all politicians, who ostensibly stands on the ticket of freedom of speech, stands on a ticket for the restitution of the United Kingdom, should see through the lawfare used by the state against people like Tommy Robinson. It's critical that politicians like Farage see it, because if he doesn't, there's literally no hope, which is where the conversation started.
It's legally it's a very complicated one, because I do get the point that it was, I think, millions and millions of people saw the video he was told not to put out and then put out.
I think 160 million. Yeah. I mean, that's huge.
It's like more people than this population. I mean, it's around the world, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Tommy swears blind, and he'll swear blind, off record, on record, whatever. He will tell you these people were being honest about the situation regarding the boy. I have to be careful because I don't want to end up in solitary either. But that's his opinion, and he's putting out what is his journalism. I think the judge said, these people were not credible who said the things about the boy, and so you got to go to prison for a year in solitary.
Yeah.
It seems nuts.
Yeah. So, I mean, going to prison was because he was in contempt of court, because he showed the film when it was injuncted and he was prohibited from doing it. So, I mean, his incarceration doesn't turn on whether the film was right or wrong, or the rights and wrongs of the situation.
No. But the civil case in the first place was about that, wasn't
it? The first case was all about that. But the fact that he was elevated by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, who I mean. He's a horrible man. He represented Gerry Adams.
That's your opinion.
It is a fact that Lord Hermer is a horrible man.
Those are not necessarily the views of... I'm being very careful. I don't want to get...
no, that's all. Well, people can sue me for having the view that I think...
sue Ben and not Heretics. I don't know how it works.
Oh, I see. Forgive me. I don't want to get your channel into trouble. Yes. But no, he is... I mean, look, let me just tell you what he's done. He's represented Gerry Adams. He's made the case for the Caribbean islands to claim reparations for the slave trade against the United Kingdom. Our Attorney General is promoting cases against the country by foreign entities. It's completely wrong. He represented illegal migrants, trying to resettle them from Chagos into the United Kingdom. He promoted the Chagos deal itself, handing over Chagos to Mauritius. He tried to change the Legacy Act, which is an act of parliament that prohibited people like Gerry Adams bringing a case against the British government because they were wrongly imprisoned back in whenever. He tried to change the Legacy Act so that Gerry Adams could bring a case against the British government. This is a man who, in my opinion, not Heretic's opinion, but in my opinion, shouldn't be anywhere near public office. And he is the man who effectively put Tommy Robinson in jail.
Wow. I think a lot of people didn't know this. I think that's why it's so interesting speaking with you, because I think you have this insider, well, not necessarily insider, but you have a more comprehensive understanding of the full facts. And I think that's going to surprise a lot of people. I mean, they're not surprised that this was a politically motivated situation, but that it was that linked in that way.
Yeah, but Farage sort of got it. I'm sure Farage understands it. Anyway, so that was the first bust up, I think, between Musk and Farage, because Farage couldn't see it. And then I think the other thing that must have really, I do not have this from Elon Musk, but I'm just surmising that, to have someone say, well, I'm going to get $100 million from Elon Musk when actually $100 million was never offered, must probably irritate him a little bit.
In the interest of balance here, it is probably fair to say, or is it fair to say, that Nigel Farage has been quite possibly the most influential politician Nigel Farage has been the most influential man in our politics in the last 50 years.
We would not have got the referendum in 2016 had it not been for Nigel Farage. Absolute fact. The tragedy is that having won that referendum, that's when the country really needed Nigel Farage to come forward and fight for a vision, for a plan of a post-EU membership United Kingdom. What is the plan? We've still never really had a plan. I mean, I've got a perfect vision of what it means to be a post-EU member state. But the plan was not fought for. We won the referendum. Nigel Farage sailed off into the sunset. Boris Johnson then promised he would deliver Brexit. We all knew that the withdrawal agreement that he was negotiating was rubbish. We bit our lower lip and put it through because we needed to leave the EU for fear of a second referendum and all of that. But actually, we then needed Farage on the battlefield fighting for a proper Brexit after that. And, one of the issues I've got with Nigel is he says Brexit's done. And it's not done. We've left Northern Ireland behind in the European Union. One of the reasons we can't deviate and do what's right for the United Kingdom is because we've got a grappling hook into the United Kingdom through Northern Ireland, a regulatory grappling hook. We talked about regulations in the car, as you kindly picked me up earlier.
In my Ferrari.
In your Ferrari. And, this regulatory grappling hook from the EU via Northern Ireland into the body of Great Britain prevents us from doing what's right for the UK. And so we haven't left. And there's a border down the Irish Sea and over 1 million British citizens in Northern Ireland. Let me put it this way. if you fly from London to Brussels, you have different rights as a British citizen than you do when you're in London. You are a diminished citizen in Belfast. You don't have the same human rights laws that.
Did you mean Belfast initially? Because you said Brussels.
Sorry, and definitely Brussels, but I meant Belfast.
Okay.
So if you fly from London to Belfast, technically not in the United Kingdom, because we have technically got a border down the Irish Sea. Your rights as an individual, your rights as a British citizen, your rights as to do business, they all change from London to Belfast. And that is an anathema for anyone who believes in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. How can that be? How can you have different rights? So we haven't left the EU. We've left part of the country behind, and the rest of the country is seriously compromised. The only way of getting out of the EU is actually to burn the withdrawal agreement and burn the subsequent trade agreement that Boris Johnson signed.
Is it maybe, if we were going to be fair to Nigel, though, is there not a case where he's thinking in his...
I want to be fair to Nigel.
Yeah, well, let's be fair to Nigel. In his mind, of which only he'll know what's going on there, is he, because he's come out recently with stuff about like trans women, which he can't possibly believe. Is it just a case of we're at 33% of the public vote? We want to get the 35 to 40. We're going to have to get some of these sort of middling Tory kind of guys to move over. I've got to be a bit more careful regarding Tommy Robinson, regarding trans. And then once I'm in, as politicians always do, I'm going to enact what I actually want to do rather than what I said, which I'm not saying that's an admirable trait or an admirable thing to do.
Well, I mean, you're accusing him of potential, not that you're accusing him, but the insinuation is he may be lying.
Well, I think, or curbing his.
Well, I think it's lying, isn't it? If you believe that transgender ideology is not a thing, but then you stand for it, that's a lie, isn't it?
It is, but what's the point in standing by principles entirely if you don't actually get the job?
Well, I think it's fundamentally important, actually. So I would say that I don't think he is lying. I don't think, my own personal belief is that Nigel Farage, do you want this program to be a thing on Nigel? We can do that. I mean, perhaps it's interesting for people, but Farage, in my view, doesn't have a political philosophy. I think I mentioned that. He doesn't have an overarching set of principles that guide his political thinking. And he is what I would call the ultimate political expedient. He is a fox. He's not a lion. He's cunning. He knows how to play the political landscape, and he pivots from one issue to the other, depending on how he thinks it's going to be received by the electorate. And so you get very weird declarations coming out of reform. So on the one hand, they talk about ditching diversity, equity, and inclusion, but then saying, well, actually, if you're self-identifying as a man, you can go into a women's prison. And that can only happen if you actually buy into the DEI regulatory framework. You can't, because that's what gives the protection to the transgender ideology in a regulatory sense. So you can't say ditch DEI, but actually men who've got rid of their tackle can go into women's prisons.
I'd argue they're two different things.
No, they're...
DEI is an idea of, you go up in your position in a job because of your colour, sex, background, or whatever, or trans stuff as well. Whereas this is this weird belief. I'm not saying it's any better, but it's this strange belief of, well, these people literally are women.
But these people are given the right to be treated as women through DEI, through the Equalities Act, through that form of progressive discrimination to which you referred. That's what gives them the foundations on which they can make the argument that they should be in a women's prison. And if you want to burn DEI, as I want to get rid of all the regulations that create DEI, the laws, and there's a multiplicity of them, if you want to get rid of them, it's impossible for reform to say that someone who's had his tackle chopped off can go into a women's prison. That becomes an impossibility at that point.
Yeah.
So it's not joined up thinking. And you will see this repeatedly with Farage. He talks about the need to cut back the welfare state, but he wants to remove the cap on two-child benefits, which is completely the wrong thing to do, by the way. If you want hardworking people in this country to be able to have children, you reward having children through the tax system. You don't do it through benefits. You can imagine who are the people who are going to, procreate like Billio if you do it through the benefit system. It's all the people who are not on work. Apart from anything else, they have time to bonk much more than others who are at work. And so what you want are policies that are coherent, holistic. And you can only come to those if you have a joined up, coherent, holistic philosophy. And that's why you get these really odd things coming out of Farage. He doesn't have that philosophy. And I would go so far as to say, And people watching this program are going to think Ben isn't right, but I'm absolutely convinced I am right. I think that even the campaign to leave the EU by Farage was a political convenience for him, because he could see that there was a significant minority of people in the 1990s in this country who wanted to leave the EU. And it was a soapbox on which he could successfully stand using the proportional representation system in the European Parliament to ensure that he gets returned to the EU Parliament time and time again. And my evidence for believing that he's not a true Brexiteer is that having won the referendum in 2016, if I had been Farage, I would have been cock-a-hoop. I would have gone, right, I've won my battle to leave, and now I'm going to stand here and I'm going to tell the British government exactly what they need to do to make us a proud, independent, prosperous United Kingdom. This is how you do it, boys and girls, and I'm not going until you, Mrs. May, deliver it. And actually, he did the opposite. We won the referendum, and he said, right, we won the referendum, I'm off. And that, I can't reconcile that in my head.
Yeah, it's a tough one. We can never know what people are really thinking. And I suppose I do try to see the good in everyone, which puts me in a difficult space.
I'm not saying he's bad. I mean, a cunning fox is a perfectly respectable creature in its own right. But, you know, what the country needs, from time to time, a fox can be a very useful animal. But what the country needs right now are lions. Lions that actually know what they believe in and will not give ground, and will let the electorate know.
But you'd rather have a fox in power than a bunch of lions just off in the savannah somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I don't
What
want
can
a
you
fox
do from the savannah? What are you going to do in the savannah?
There's no point having a fox in power, because actually
hopefully
what
we'll
will
reduce
happen,
immigration. That's what everyone wants.
Yeah, but he won't, will he? Because if he hasn't got the philosophy and the coherent, holistic approach to which I referred, if he can't deliver on all those fronts together, and by the way, also to deliver, he needs to be able to attract other good people into the party, which I think is going to be hugely challenging for reform.
Keep talking about ghosts.
What do you mean?
There was that chairman who went, David Bull was going on TV and talking about ghosts.
Was he?
Yeah, Derek Acora had attacked him, and a ghost of Derek Acora.
I remember this, yeah.
This is a problem, and it was someone else as well who came out with the trans stuff, and then Nigel sort of had to sort of go along with it. And there are a bunch of, and it does feel like they, you know, the support for them goes up if they just stay quiet. You know, just stay quiet for 3 years, and people as a protest will just vote for you, and hopefully you'll stop immigration.
There's another really good reason, Andrew, why you must, when you're campaigning, actually say what it is you're going to do. Because if you're elected on a manifesto, then the Commons can't block, the Lords can't block you. The Commons have to stay, well, you've got a majority, but the Lords can't block you. It's a manifesto pledge. So promise that which you intend to deliver. Carry the nation with you. And the nation's there. You don't have to mislead people to know that to get into office right now. You don't need to mislead people to get into office right now. You don't need to do it. The nation wants that kind of agenda that Advance UK offers. It wants to get rid of this nonsense of transgender ideology. It wants our borders to be reinstituted. It wants to get rid of the human rights laws that prohibit us from being able to do what's right for this country. It wants to get rid of the Equalities Act. It wants a judicial system that is fair, irrespective of what your ethnicity is, what your societal background is. The people want this. He'd be pushing against an open door, and yet he isn't. It's because he's currying favour with what he believes to be the establishment, the broader mainstream commentariat. Farage wants to be acceptable to them. He's pivoting to what people colloquially refer as the left. It's actually, he's pivoting towards the uniparty position on things. He's even said himself by the next election, he's going to be left of the Conservative Party. Who the hell needs another political party that's going to be on the left of the Conservative Party? And having said that, having said I'm going to be on the left of the Conservative Party, he's taken all the pressure off the Tories. The Tories, who were under pressure to move to the so-called colloquially right side of politics, are now thinking, well, we can be comfortable. And you saw in the last reshuffle that Kemi Badenoch did, she brought James Cleverly back, a complete one-nation Tory wet. So the pressure's off the Tory party. Farage is going left. The Tory party's got no pressure on it. And there's a massive gap on the colloquial so-called right, which is, by the way, I don't believe in these right and left labels. What I mean by the right are people who believe in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, who believe in freedom of speech, believe in democracy, throwing off the shackles of supranational institutions, sacking all the bureaucrats who've infected our democracy, and bringing back equality under the law. These are basic principles which Farage and Reform do not champion anymore. And you saw that through their whole debate on transgender nonsense.
They might consider that this is not a right-left issue, so saying we're left of the Tories or whatever, it doesn't really mean anything. I think one thing that a lot of politicians underestimate is, and commentators as well, when I've been on LBC or these different channels, I don't think they seem to realise that, and I know I keep banging this drum, maybe it's just me, it is immigration. That is it.
That's the salient issue of the day.
I cannot believe that other people are like, well, no, it's the amount of money that we have in very important. Of course it is. Of course those things are important, but that's not what gets people going. It's walking down the street and going, I haven't heard anyone speak English in my country. That pisses everyone off. And maybe Farage is going, look, that's the one thing I want to achieve. That's it. And if I have to say stuff about trans, I know you're saying,
but he's not even doing that, Andrew. He's on the. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he's on the record saying he's not concerned about the rate of demographic change in this country. He said that to Steve Edgington. He said to Steve Edgington that he's not in favour of the deportation of all people who've entered this country illegally. If you're not in favour of deporting everyone here that's illegally in the United Kingdom, then you are literally sending a message to the world that actually, if you get in, we've got a problem getting rid of you. And so, you can probably stay. It's all the wrong messaging.
Yeah. What would you do with someone who had come in 30 years ago illegally and now has a family and kids and things like that? Well,
it depends on what their status is now. Yeah. But one of the first things that an advanced UK government would do is ban the granting of indefinite leave to remain and ban the granting of new British citizenship. That has to stop while we get to understand who is in this country illegally, who is in this country having overstayed their visa, how many people have we got here, and where are they located? Once we've got to grips with the problem, then we can consider handing out the greatest privilege, in my view, global privilege possible, which is to get a British passport. At the moment, if you're in this country for a set period of time, it becomes your right to have a British passport. It's not a privilege. They see it as a right. And we've got to reestablish the fact that it's a privilege. And so that starts by actually understanding the demographic you've got, paring back that demographic to a more settled state so that you're not walking down the street thinking, where the hell am I? And then having settled the country, having deported all the illegal migrants, or at least got the problem in focus, having cut back legal migration dramatically, having made sure that those people who are here with indefinite leave but would like to go home are given the opportunity to go home, if that's what they'd like to do, and we can find an accommodation for them. When you've settled all of that, then you can go back and look at, other more imaginative immigration policies. But right now, we need to reverse back dramatically. And Reform's not offering that.
See, I imagine what people are listening to. I think most people listening to this, particularly from this audience, probably agree with everything you've said, as do I. And that's the philosophical side. But then the practical side is, you're not going to get in power, are you?
Why not?
Because it's a big change will have to happen in just a couple of years.
But let me tell you, I was deputy leader of Reform when we were polling 6%. By the time I left, we were 16%. And I saw the change in the political landscape. We gave effect to the change in the political landscape. The British population, as I said earlier, are no longer culturally hooked for voting for Labour or the Tories. And I believe absolutely firmly that the British public want the kind of agenda that Advanced UK is unashamedly promising.
Half of them do. And then half of them are lefties. That's what this... Okay, so
the biggest vote, the biggest democratic mandate ever was to leave the EU. I know the Remainers keep saying, well, it was 52 to 48%, but actually it was a massive turnout and 17.4 million people, the biggest vote ever still in this country, was to leave the EU. And it hasn't been done. And that's part of the problem, Andrew. Mm-hmm. There was a democratic mandate which the politicians who were charged with the responsibility of delivering turned their back on. And we will not have a settled country until the politicians actually do what they were directed to do by the people. And we will do that. Advanced UK will do that. At the heart, by the way, at the heart of everything that I've promised that Advanced UK would do, at the heart of it is the prerequisite that we leave the EU. None of what I've said that Advance UK would like to do is possible unless we leave the EU. We have to get out of its clutches.
None of that changes, though, even if it's 48%, let's say, okay, that nearly half of the, and also Remain and Brexit isn't exactly a good left-right dichotomy, but it doesn't change the fact that you know this, you're splitting the vote. If I'm a lefty, it's a dream that Advance have come along right now.
Yeah, so I think it's really important not to get caught in the politics of left and right, because people just assume Reform is right-wing, Conservative is right-wing, Advance is right-wing, so we're all splitting each other's vote. But actually, there's a reason why people regard the Conservative Party as the uniparty with Labour. It's because they basically believe the same thing. They believe in governance for the global good. They believe in internationalism. They believe in the G7, the G20, and they believe in taking down borders. I mean, even the King of England said we have no borders with France. The King of the United Kingdom said we have no borders with France. It's an absolutely absurd comment to make. Of course, we should have borders with France. There's no other country in the world with which I would wish to have a border more than with France. We must have a border with France. It's that kind of thinking that needs to be reversed.
Yeah. The King said a few pretty bonkers
Weird
things recently. There's a lot of Islam stuff as well. Did you see Rachel Reeves? Was it Rachel Reeves who started wearing all this Islamic gear to go and greet a bunch of Muslims?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what happens when you lose touch with your own cultural roots. And again, the conversation we were having in the car, and it's really important. It's a really good point, and I'd just like to make this. We often talk about our Christian cultural roots. What we don't talk about is our Christian constitutional roots. This is constitutionally a Christian country. And we are losing sight of that. The king of the country has lost sight of that because he talks about multi-faith. We're not a multi-faith country. Constitutionally, we're a Christian country. Starmer wants to remove the bishopric from the House of Lords. And the reason he wants to remove the bishopric from the House of Lords is because at that point he'll be able to claim, actually, we're not constitutionally a Christian country. They don't sit in Parliament. We had a brilliant setup. We had the most senior the law-making body of the Commons and the Lords collectively, together with the highest judiciary in the country, in the Lords, together with the bishopric. We had an integrated parliament, a parliament that is the most powerful body, the lawmaking, but also the most powerful body in the country. It defined who we were. And that constitutional arrangement was set aside by Tony Blair, and Starmer wants to continue that destruction of our constitution. And what we've got to do, another thing Advance UK would do, is absolutely put Christianity firmly back at the heart of the constitution of this country. And from that would follow the cultural aspects of Christianity. But we often talk about a cultural Christian, being culturally a Christian, and we forget about the constitutional aspect. And the constitutional aspect, without wishing to overlabor the point now, is fundamentally important.
It's a difficult one for those who are not Christian who are listening. I think many are, and those who are not, to get behind necessarily. David Starkey, when he was on, he said this is not a Christian country in that sense. He said we didn't form our laws and things from Christianity. Instead, it's Greco-Roman, and we actually shaped our feeling of what Christianity is around those Greco-Roman kind of rules around democracy and those kinds of things. I mean, it's saying the same thing in another way. Either way, the Christianity we've always known is interlinked with the society we've built. So getting rid of it, I don't think they realise this. I don't think Starmer realises. I think a lot of people don't realise it. In getting rid of that particular brand of Christianity that helped to form what we have, we're getting rid of everything we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Christianity did it to a fault so well, was to remove itself from interfering in the state, and so the constitutional Christianity to which I refer, it's almost kind of invisible. But I don't wholly agree with David Starkey. I think the Christian, and perhaps he would say, Ben, this is a slightly different point, but for example, the abolition of the slave trade was the responsibility for that, the prime mover behind it was an evangelical Christian, a guy called William Wilberforce, whom every viewer and listener would have heard of. And
he would say that's a Christianity that formed based on the Greco-Roman.
Yeah, but it came through Parliament, didn't it? The change came through Parliament, and it was made by a Christian. And it was those Christian patrician, it wasn't liberalism that got us to ban the slave trade. It was our Christian patrician attitude, the caring side of Christianity, which went through our parliament, as with the case having been made by William Wilberforce, and I think we've got to reconnect with that.
What would it take? Let's say Farage called you tomorrow and wanted to merge Advance with Reform. What would it take for you to agree?
I say, Farage, you don't even have to merge. Adopt our constitution, put checks and balances in place on yourself, surround yourself with great people, and frankly, I'll go off and retire. I don't do the job.
That's really interesting, because typically a politician or somebody in your place would be going, gosh, I hope Farage doesn't move more towards us, because then we're squeezed out. But I think you're saying all the better then.
All the better. Many politicians say this. Believe me, this is what I really feel. I don't want to be in politics. I got dragged into politics initially in 2016 because Carney and Osborne were talking rubbish about leaving the EU from an economic perspective, and I knew they were talking rubbish. My antenna went up, the balloon went up, and I thought something's not right with our political landscape. And then I became an MEP, and then I've been on a journey. And during
Prime Minister Benjamin Habib, that's got a ring to it.
Well, maybe not. Probably not.
Yes, second Benjamin. There's Disraeli was one.
Yeah, Benjamin Disraeli.
Yeah, he'd be the next Benjamin second.
I've been on a journey of discovery, and I've discovered lots of bad things about the way we're governed. And I had thought that our political class used to represent our interests to the best of their ability, and they were perfectly capable people. I know that they're now pretty incompetent people, and they often do the opposite of what's in our best interest. So I'm only in politics because of that. And if Farage could democratize his party, if he could genuinely make it possible for great thinkers of our side of the debate, as it were, to have a home in his party, to create what might become a front bench of lions in the way that I described it, rather than, a fox sitting at the head of a bunch of sycophants.
Yeah.
If you could do that, great, do it.
Because it does feel a bit that way, I've got to say. Because I've leaned towards reform because I just want change. And I'm worried about anyone else. They're not going to be able to get in. It would get the number of votes. But if you had behind Farage those kinds of, as you say, these kinds of lions, it would. Because every time I see someone from Reform, it's like I say, they're talking about Derek Acorah and ghosts and things like that. And you're like, who are these bunch of potatoes?
I mean, Potchin was on, she was on Talk Radio the other day with Alex Phillips, in which she said, she was in favour of ID cards. It's like, come on. Which planet are you on? And then Farage was talking about making cryptocurrency part of the fabric of British trading, but he wanted to tax it. Now, if you want cryptocurrency to be a genuine currency, you can't tax it. You can't tax it because then it just becomes an asset. Are you with me? It cannot be a currency.
What do they do in El Salvador?
What?
In El Salvador, what do they do with that? Because that's the crypto country, isn't it?
I don't know what they do in El Salvador.
They've gone fully crypto. I'd have to look at it.
But they don't tax it in the States. So it's great. So it's this kind of thinking that's a problem. So Advance UK, there's a definite gap for Advance UK, and the way to deal with Advance UK is to adopt the agenda. To deal with us is to do what's right.
You're giving that pressure from the other side. I like that. I like that because it's now Farage has to think twice instead of going too far.
Yeah, and the Tories have to think twice about us too. Everyone has to think twice. But can I just say one more thing? Anyone who's fearing the vote being split in 2029, stop worrying about it. The key right now is to make sure that the agenda for the United Kingdom is well set, so that Reform understands what it needs to do. Ideally, the Conservative Party understands what it needs to do. Advance UK will shine a light on what we believe is required, and we will bring maximum pressure between now and 2028. And I also guarantee that the next government will be a pro-British government. It will be it'll be something along the lines of an Advance UK agenda, the next government. Absolutely. It will not be a left-leaning, wishy-washy, uniparty, trying to please everyone kind of government. It will not be. It will be a party that pleases the majority of people in this country, the silent majority who want borders put back in place, who want a proud, independent, prosperous United Kingdom in all its parts and for all its people, with our Christian constitution put first, with freedom of speech being re-established, not through a new law, but repealing all the laws which have prohibited freedom of speech in the past. That is going to be the next government of the United Kingdom. No chance that Labour's winning.
Are you not concerned at all about Corbyn's new party?
I think it's great. Let Jezbollah do what Jezbollah is going to do.
What if they become popular?
Well, they are competing. So Labour and Jezbollah are competing for the same pool of votes. That is for sure. And they are going to make it more likely that we get the kind of government that
they're splitting the vote.
But their vote is splittable. Their vote is splittable because Farage doesn't share my Labour Party and Jezbollah are chasing the same votes. Farage isn't chasing my votes. Farage is going after the Labour vote. The Conservative Party is going after the Liberal Democrat vote.
Because they think they've got all of us.
Well, they haven't, though. They've left the majority behind.
Yeah, but we've got no one else to vote for, but now we've got you. So in that sense, there is a slight split. There is a bit of a splitting.
Well, but the Conservative Party is the uniparty. They're part of that international order. You know, that's why the nation has seen the Conservative Party to be basically the same as the Labour Party. Different shade, but it's the same principles. That's why we say it's the uniparty. And Farage is moving in that direction. And so there is no splitting of the vote because none of them are saying what we believe in. Jezbollah and Labour are chasing the same vote. They're chasing the same ideology. Everyone is chasing that vote. We're not splitting any damn vote. We are going to represent the majority view, the 17.4 million people.
Have you had a private chat with Farage about this? How's your relationship with him?
Well, it's not good.
Is it frosty?
I haven't had any conversation. I haven't had a conversation with Farage since before he became leader of Reform. I haven't even spoken to him since he took over as leader. And remember, when he took over as leader, I was deputy leader. And I didn't speak to him once in my deputy leadership period.
And so is your implication, you do feel that he's very much sort of just a lone figure being his own thing?
Farage, even reformers say this. Farage is reform, reform is Farage. And I say they're right.
Do you know what actually happened with Rupert Lowe? There were these accusations of bullying or something, and then that was it.
Well, it's all nonsense, isn't it? I mean, it was all trumped up. And this is another thing. They use lawfare. The very lawfare that they should be seeking to prohibit, or at least culturally remove from day-to-day use, they used against Rupert Lowe. Zia Youssef made a trumped-up police charge complaint against Rupert, suggesting that Rupert wanted to kill him or something, or threatened him physically. He made that complaint 3 months apparently after the threat had been made. He was so worried about the threat that he waited for 3 months before telling the police. And then there were charges of bullying, and it was all trumped up. I knew that at the time. And so that's what I'm saying about reform. At every level, it just doesn't deliver.
Yeah. Do you think you might align now with Rupert Lowe? Is he going to be part of Advance?
Rupert Lowe and I share very many of the same views. We believe there has to be a repealing of just about every single law since Tony Blair came to office. That has to happen before we do any more reforms. We believe in a much stronger version of the not stronger version. We believe in the United Kingdom. We believe in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So we're philosophically much closer to each other than either of us are.
Will there be an alliance? Because he has, is it Restore?
Restore Britain. But that's a movement. It's not a political party.
So he could then be
He could do whatever he wants. He's most welcome to join the minute he wants to join.
Interesting. What do you think there is any way of, one of the issues we're talking about immigration, one of the things that everyone's thinking is really Islam, right? Is there a way to integrate Islam into our society? Can there be a kind of Islam that is compatible with us?
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is that I'd much rather reacquaint ourselves with our Christian cultural and constitutional roots and make policies based on that rather than policies aimed to target Islam. I think that would be counterproductive. I want to champion Christianity through our system and the kind of secular governance that we had, as opposed to the kind of sectarianism now that is now kind of infected the United Kingdom. So that's the overarching thing. But I did a debate at the Oxford Union in which you only get 9 minutes, so you can't really talk about Islam in the broadest possible sense. The motion was that Islam is incompatible with democracy. And in 9 minutes, it's a very limited number of arguments you can make. But the central tenet of my argument, which I'll repeat here, is that Islam, its holy book, the Quran, is the word of God, as dictated to Prophet Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. And it is, being the word of God, it's perfect. And because it's perfect, it's incapable of improvement. And therefore, even though there have been periods of enlightenment in Islam, with Islam over the last 1,500 years, it tends back to fundamentalism, because you're not really allowed to debate Islam. You're not really allowed to challenge it. That's why you get all these people like Tariq Ali wanting the Abrahamic laws to be protected. He wants legislation to protect the Abrahamic laws. What he means is he wants legislation to protect Islam. Yeah. He doesn't want Islam challenged, because it's an affront to a Muslim to have the Quran challenged, because that's the word of God. How could you challenge the word of God? And so if Muslims aren't prepared to have a debate about the fundamentals of their ideology, it becomes a fundamentalist religion. And that is at odds with democracy, because democracy debates everything. And so I think Islam does present a big challenge for the United Kingdom or any liberal democracy such as ours. And the sad thing, I think, about the way we have governed ourselves is that in the pursuit of liberalism, this belief that all of humanity is wonderful and kind and wanting to be, welcoming and generous and so on and so forth, we've welcomed into our bosom actually some fairly barbaric forms of Islam, Wahhabi, fundamentalist, extremist kinds of forms of Islam, which are completely incompatible with our very delicate political, constitutional fabric. And it is tearing us apart. And in fact, we've made things even worse. Going back to DEI, we've put a protective blanket around Islam already. We haven't created a law yet to outlaw criticizing it, but we're pretty close to doing that. But we've already put a protective blanket around it. So we've taken into our bosom a very delicate bosom, which evolved over 100 years into its kind, welcoming form, a very muscular, challenging ideology which has no truck with itself being challenged. And now when I grew up I was born in Karachi, and I grew up in Karachi, in Pakistan until I was 13. And I would argue that at that time, Islam was going through quite a liberal, quite an enlightened period. When I grew up, people, I would say there were small M Muslims. They held their faith in their pockets. It wasn't outwardly always available. Some people obviously wore the burqa and stuff, but there was alcohol freely available in clubs. There were casinos. There were dancing parlors or whatever they're called, discos, everything. We grew up with a basically Western-facing form of Islam. But Islam changed in the 1980s. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is very good on this. I'm sure you've had her on.
Yes.
Yeah, she's very good on this. And, Saudi exported this fundamentalist Islam to which I'm referring. And it infected all of the Muslim world, from North Africa to the Middle East to Pakistan and beyond. And the form of Islam that we have in the United Kingdom is this fundamentalist form of Islam. You will hear Farage and people talking about the need to resist Islamic extremists. Of course, that's self-evidently true. Why would you not resist extremists? But we have to go one stage further. We have to resist fundamentalism. And that's much more challenging, because they're law-abiding people, but they have a kind of fundamentalist approach to religion, which makes being in our very delicate democracy extremely difficult.
It's funny hearing you when you talk about the debate issue, that you can't debate, and I think of the Talmudic scholars of the Haredi Jews and those kind of things. It's the total opposite. The whole point is to debate.
Is it? Yeah,
that's what the Talmud, I believe, is. It's a bunch of rabbis arguing with one another about what it all means and those kinds of things. It's a totally different philosophy. And as we were saying before off air, it's not a evangelizing. It doesn't proselytize.
Yeah, try and recruit all the time.
No, it just does sort of its thing.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting point you make. And how many Jews are there in the world? 15 million?
Yeah.
And yet it is by far the most successful race. Oh, if you can call Judaism a race, would you call it a race?
Yes and no. Yes.
Yes. It's supremely successful. So many great minds, so many great scientists, so many great philosophers.
You're talking to one.
So many financial institutions.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's because they debate.
Yeah.
Because they will just sit down and natter and natter and natter until they've sorted stuff out. Indoctrination never yielded good results.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's also, there's more to it as well. I think which we could get into, but it's quite controversial territory around IQ, around cousin marriage and different kinds of things like that. There's a great conversation I had with Matthew Syed, of the Times.
I don't know him.
He was I think his father was Muslim or something. Yes, and he was talking about banning cousin marriage, and he said that was the big change in Britain that brought about a kind of individualism or liberalism or whatever it was in the 6th century when we banned cousin marriage, and it changed
it changed our society completely. I totally agree.
Rather than being clans, we had a nation. Whereas when you've got cousin marriage, it's more about individual clans, and it becomes very tight knit. And that's when things get a bit culty, I suppose.
Yeah, and we've gone too far now. I agree with that completely. Because if you get rid of cousin marriage, extended family, you need other systems to create trust in amongst the populace. And so you do that through the state.
Yeah.
But now the state is infected we're setting families aside. We're breaking the actual nuclear family.
Yes.
That's what the state is doing. So when we talk about the need for birth rate, as I mentioned, we shouldn't be removing the cap. What we should be doing is giving married couples a tax break. We should be giving them a tax break every time they procreate. There should be a policy for bonk for Britain. I think it's a great one, isn't it? Bonk for Britain.
Yeah. Well, the only Western country, the only Western country where the birth rates are steady or going up is Israel.
Is that
and
right?
it's not the Hasidics and the Haredi, it's the secular Jews there, because they have an idea there of nationalism and there's a threat around them, so there's this coming together. A lot of people on the right are sometimes a bit envious of Israel, and they're saying, why should they have this extra home and this extra place they can go to if things get tough and blah, blah, blah. And I just think, well, that's not very aspirational. Rather than be envious, say, let's have this here. Let's have what they have here. Let's build this here, this kind of family unit, tradition, and those kinds of
We've
things.
got to do that. Yeah. And you can't be a nation state. You can't be a settled society. You can't have a settled culture unless you have a family unit. At the basic, that's the basic building block. I can't speak with any great success because I'm a divorced man, but I understand the need, and I've done my best as a father. And I've had 3 children, by the way, so I've at least
you've contributed.
I've contributed, more than I've there'll be a net contribution from my side.
Right.
Of but I think that's crucial. We've got to, and we've got to give families responsibility. We've got to remove the state, the apparatus of the state out of families. So whilst the abolition of cousin marriages, I think, propelled us to statehood and nationhood and greatness, it's now gone too far.
Yeah.
We need to go back a bit to the family.
I agree. I've got one more question for you. Where can people find Advance and follow your work?
Yeah, so please go to advanceuk.org.uk. I'll repeat that, advanceuk.org.uk. There's a 12-minute video there, which you can watch on double speed. So in 6 minutes, you can get the whole ethos of the party, how it's structured and everything else. And if you like what I say and you believe in Advance UK, you want to give it a spin, please join. I've said we won't apply to be a political, because I wanted to test whether or not there's real appetite out there, Andrew, for a new political party. I set a self-imposed hurdle of 30,000 members before we will apply to the Electoral Commission, and only £10 per head membership for a year if you join now. We're getting closer and closer to that 30,000 number.
How close are you?
We've got over 27,000 supporters and over 19,000 members, and pushing 20,000 donors now.
Okay.
So and that's in 6 weeks.
It's big numbers.
That's big numbers. It's big numbers. I tell you what's really interesting. Have we got time for this? What's really interesting is I'm getting people who I used to campaign with Reform, who were former Reformers, now joined us. The criticism that used to be made on the streets was that no one knows Reform on the streets. You're all good on social media, but no one knows you on the streets. People are coming to me and saying, Ben, it's really surprising. I was talking to this chap in the pub the other day, and he's heard of Advance UK. They're talking about Advance UK. It's getting out there. It's getting out there fast. It's because the people want it.
Well, there you go. And who's a heretic you admire?
Now you gave me notice on my last one.
Yes,
I haven't had time to think about it. A heretic I admire. I would say off the cuff, Captain Napier, who wrote back when he had been under instructions not to take sinned, and he wrote back to his hierarchy and he said, "I have sinned." SINNED or SINDH, whichever way you wish to take it.
But he was told don't sin.
Don't take Sind. Don't defeat the army. Don't take the province of Sind.
Oh, hang on. Okay, right. I see.
This was in colonial days, yeah.
Oh, bloody hell.
And he said, "I have sinned." I thought that's a rather good comment.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. People, go and follow as well Ben Habib, because you're also on Twitter, aren't you? You're on X. Yes, of course you are. You're on X. Go and follow Ben Habib on X. Check out advanceuk.co.uk. He's come in all for this, got lost. I went and found him. We did a whole thing. It's a big effort. So do go and check him out, because not all politicians and things do come and, so think about that. Hit the like button. Keep watching this channel.